Is this where you met John Drew? Did you meet John in Tuskegee?
Well, I had met him briefly in New York, but he was great friends with some of my friends, and they had contacted him and told him I was coming and asked him to be sure to look out for me.
The first time you met John, did he sweep you off your feet?
Mm-mm.
He didn't.
No, he did most women.
Well, tell me about the first time that you met him.
Well, the first time I met him, he had a bad cold. He was in the Hotel Teresa in New York, near pneumonia. And that's not a good time to meet anyone.
You were not very impressed.
I was anything other than impressed. I found him very vulgar.
Well, when did you and John actually get together?
In Tuskegee. In Tuskegee, after I'd been there a while. I don't know. But anyway, in Tuskegee.
Well, how long did you live in Tuskegee after you and John met? Were you married in Tuskegee?
Married in Philadelphia.
Okay.
I wasn't sure that I still wasn't sure I was going to live in Alabama for the rest of my life, and I knew that he would always either be in Alabama or Georgia. He was committed to ensuring everybody in Alabama and Georgia.
Right.
That was his mission in life. And I wasn't sure yet that I wanted to do that.
Were you still working with Red Cross at the time?
No, I had left. Stell had gone to the Orient, and I had left. That's enough.
Then when do you move to Birmingham?
Sometime in the 40s.
Okay, the late 40s, so it's
in the
49
or something.
Okay.
I lived with and worked for and with Mrs. Anderson, Nanette Homemade Candy. She's a black woman that had a factory.
In Tuskegee?
No, right here in Birmingham.
Mrs. Anderson.
Gertrude Anderson. She is one of the unspoken and unheard of people here, and I can't understand it. She was the foremost woman here. She had a factory. She supplied chocolates to Loveman's under the name of, her name was Nanette Homemade Candies, and they would buy her candy and put another box top over it with Loveman's something or other. There were two candy makers here, Mary Ball no, there were three. And she ranked with them. They interchanged things. She had hand-dipped chocolates, and so did they. She also sold hard candy.
Where was her factory located?
508 11th Avenue North. The freeway came along and destroyed the whole thing.
And is that your first job here in?
Those months, yes. I opened a candy store on 4th Avenue between I guess 17th and 18th Street. In the same block where Bob Savoy was.
Okay.
That was a bustling area.
In the same block that the Famous and Frolic.
Across the street.
Okay. All right. And this was your candy store?
Yes.
And she supplied you with candy?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then after the freeway came through, is that what ended her business?
No. Actually, I got married, and her children, Charles was a lawyer, her children, BJ and Eleanor, they wanted to take over the business. And Charles had left Massachusetts. He recodified the statutes of Massachusetts. He's a very brilliant guy. In fact, all of them were brilliant. Mrs. Anderson's father built 16th Street Church, Reverend Fisher. Brilliant family. Anyway, they wanted to take it over, but they didn't do well with the business. Like so often, the next generation doesn't do too well.
How long did you have the candy store?
About a year.
And what did you do after that?
I went back to Philadelphia.
Oh, for how long?
I can't remember these years. I swear I
Then
can't.
when did you eventually came back though? Prior to
John came to New York, and we went to St. Simon's Episcopal Church and got married, and then we came back.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm assuming that's in the mid-50s or so.
It's
Is
in
that
the it's a fifth.
Is that prior to the development of the Alabama Christian movement?
I don't remember the date of the date that, but John and me were there.
Okay, that was in 1956.
Well,
in
I don't know
June of
how I happened to
56.
be here. In '56, my child had been born by that time.
Okay.
We were at the opening meeting.
Okay, so you were one of the founding members then of the movement.
We were there.
At that opening meeting?
That's a meeting where Fred Shuttlesworth called Mrs. Plump's sweetheart, and she stood up and said, "I am not your sweetheart." And it almost broke it up.
Oh, is that right? Tell me a little bit, before we get into the movement, tell me what community did you live in at that time?
I've always lived in the same area.
Okay. What area is
Well,
that?
I think Smithfield.
Smithfield. Okay. Is that near the area that's called Dynamite Hill?
I live on the top of Dynamite Hill.
You're right there on the top.
on the top.
Okay. So when the freeway came through, that then sort of divided that community then, didn't it?
It did, and it took my house and half of my land. And my husband and I decided that we would just build another house up there.
Okay, so you didn't move out of the community.
Just built another house on the part of the land that they didn't take.
I see. Tell me a little about that community, the makeup of the community.
Well, most all the business and professional men and families in the city lived up there. Virgil Harris, I don't need to name them, but almost all the doctors and lawyers and everybody that made any kind of money had a house up in that area.
Was this, when you moved there, was it a black neighborhood, totally black neighborhood?
Well, one of the reasons it's called Dynamite Hill is because we integrated it. The first house I lived in was on First Street, 1 block away from what is now called Dynamite Hill. It was a brand new little brick house, and while John was in Philadelphia marrying me, the Ku Klux Klan came and burned all the doors. Took the doors inside the house, and I don't know what that was. I guess because the house was solid brick and not veneer, but they thought that it probably would burn up. So we had to put in brand new doors in the bedrooms and all around the house.
Burn all of the doors?
Burned the doors. You ever heard of such a dumb thing?
Inside of the house?
Inside. They must have been in, I'm guessing, I don't know what's in their minds, but they must have expected some kind of an implosion that would have destroyed it.
Well, how did you react when you came back and saw this?
We were furious. That's how.
What did you report it to the police?
No, we called the builders and ordered some new doors and clean up the mess. And I went down to Loveman's and Pizzitt's and those stores and bought beds and chairs and stuff and put it in there. It was ours.
So they were not running you off. Did you ever think of simply not moving in there since that
Never.
happened?
I had many scary nights and days, but I didn't. My attitude was to fight back.
What was scary about the nights and days that you had?
Well, almost every night some house was dynamited or burned down. I could stand in my bedroom window and look over to Center Street, 1 block away where I now live. There were three-story houses. Moncrief, a big name still in Birmingham in politics and stuff. The Moncriefs lived in one of them. And they torched those 3 houses, and they were largely frame, and they burned all 3 of them down one night. I've never seen such a fire in my life. All three houses up in flames.
These were black people that lived in these houses at that time?
Black people were trying to buy property up there. Mrs. Monk had bought a piece of property down the hill, like about between probably 9th and 8th, or 9th and 10th. Somehow she had managed, a black woman had managed to buy that land, and she had begun building, and they just kept on harassing her and doing things to her. She lives in, I think she's dead now, but her family still lives there, although the house was never completed.
Never completed.
But some ordinance or something must have passed, because people were buying property. Dr. Elliott bought some property up there. He was an old dentist here. Arthur Shores bought property. He was living farther down in Smithfield on 1st Street. But everybody was afraid to build their house, because they knew it was going to happen, you know, it would be destroyed.
This next question then raises another issue. What was the relationship of the community, your community, with the police department?
Horrible. They despised us. Absolutely horrible. They were not our friends.
They didn't come in to protect and serve you?
No. No.
How would you characterize?
Well, let's see. I'll go to Shores' house. When Shores was building his house, all the men anywhere around in the neighborhood would meet there every night with their arsenal. They would have their own guns and stuff. Leroy Gaylord and Bebe Core and some of the others, they were like vigilantes. They were driving around the area with walkie-talkies in those days, and spotting, looking for police, looking for trouble. And then if they saw anything, they would tell my husband and Shores and all those people, you know, look out. And they would get their guns ready.
You mean they were actually on the lookout for police?
Right, and
that would come
Klansmen.
into the
Policemen or Klansmen, either one. We didn't know which was which, because one was the same as the other.
So the police department and the Klan were very closely associated.
Extremely. It was my belief that all policemen also belonged to the Klan. That was my belief. I don't know that every single one did, but I believed it.
Would this then be one of the reasons that you would get involved with the movement, that you would be at the first Alabama Christian Movement meeting?
John and me, yes, because they were calling us all the time. When we moved in the little house and you wanted to know, well, what did we do? We moved in our house. But they were calling and saying, nigga, be out of here, you know, by such and such a time. Or we're going to come and do so-and-so. And my husband would say, well, just come right on, I'm ready for you. And he would talk back to them. And when I wrote a letter to the Post-Herald in 1957. John Temple Graves was the editor of the paper. And somehow or another, it touched him. And for at least 6 issues of that paper, Dean Davis Drew's name was brought up. And it caused a lot of, and my address, in which I put
Your address was printed in the
paper.
paper?
When I wrote the letter, I didn't hide. I said who I was, 1112 North 1st Street.
What did John have to say about this, your writing letters?
Oh, he proofread it. John was a great grammarian, and I'm not, and whenever I had to do anything, I would always say, read this, and he would edit. And he was proud of me, I think. But the letter only said, if Birmingham would stop waving the red flag, if your newspapers and your officials, you'd have a pretty good city. That was the gist of it, that they were, the headline was, Dean Davis Drew of this city says we're waving a red flag. So that's all I said. If you just stopped doing that, you know, people would get along.
And that, at that point, was a rather militant statement.
In the early 50s, that was unheard of.
Yes, a revolutionary statement, in fact.
That's right. But of course, you know, I didn't know that.
In 1956, the state of Alabama outlawed the operation of the NAACP in the state, which resulted in the establishment of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights.